Hi, I'm BR Davis.
I'm Staats.
And today we're going to show you how to assemble a skateboard. First thing we need to do is make sure we got all our stuff here. So the first thing we're going to need is the deck. Next we're going to need the grip tape, the hardware, the bearings, wheels, the trucks. We're going to be using a set of riser pads. And last, you want to get your tools together. You want to have a ratchet with a 10mm socket for your hardware, a 12mm socket for your truck bolts, and a 14mm socket for your kingpin. You also want a screwdriver with a Phillips tip. You could also just get a skate tool, which usually has all this stuff in it. For the deck, you'll also want to go ahead and get a file or a screwdriver and a razor or a small razor blade of some kind to cut with. Okay, now that we got all our stuff together, we're going to go ahead and start by grip taping the deck, and for that, Spike.
Well, the first thing you need to do, you need to run your hand across the board like this to make sure there's no excess debris, dust, anything like that that's going to get in the way of the grip tape sticking to the board. Secondly, just to make sure, especially with old school boards, you have to make sure the grip tape's actually going to fit on the board. So it's always a smart idea to size-wise match the grip tape to the board. Next thing you do, peel the backing off the grip tape. Place it on the board to make sure you're going to have complete coverage. The grip tape we're using today is actually perforated with holes to where no air bubbles will form. Otherwise, you could always use a hand roller and or like a roll of tape and just roll it back and forth to make sure no air bubbles are formed. Next thing you do, grab a file or anything along those lines. If you don't have a file or a chisel or something like that around, you can always use an old screwdriver to turn along the edge just to get the basic shape of the board. As you can see, when you're done running it along the edges, it actually leaves a perfect shape of the board underneath. Then you take your cutting device, whether it be a handheld razor device and or a razor blade, and you just simply very carefully cut along the edge of the line. As you can see, when done, it perfectly matches the board. Then all you need to do is take anything. You could actually take the tool that you have here, or even like a screwdriver, some kind of pointy object, running through the holes to poke the holes on the top to make sure the bolts can go through. If you don't have anything like that handy, you can actually always use one of the bolts itself. now that we got the board complete, VR will talk to you about the wheels, trucks, and bearings.
So first thing we want to do is put the bearings into the wheels, and basically, you know, get a good set of bearings. Don't go cheap on these. These have dust shields on both sides, so it really doesn't matter which way they go in. So you can do logo side out or just the regular bearing shield side out. Some bearings will actually only have a dust shield on one side. Makes for easier cleaning, but you definitely want the dust shield to go to the outside. And these just kind of pop in for now. Just kind of use your thumbs to get them in there, and we'll get them in there tighter here in a second. Do the one side, same thing for the other. Just get them, you know, thumb tight for right now. Go ahead and do that for all 4 of your wheels. Okay, now that we have our bearings in our wheels, we can go ahead and take a look at our trucks. These trucks have a single washer in them and a lock nut for the outside. You want to use lock nuts. You don't want these things coming loose while you're trying to skate. Nothing worse than the wheel coming off. The actual wheel will just slide right through the bearings. Make sure you have the outside you want to the outside and the inside you want on the inside. Drop on your washer. Now some trucks will actually have 2 washers. These are tapered on the inside, so you don't have to worry about it. Go ahead and start your nut. Make sure you start it by hand first. Always finger tighten it first, tight as you can get with your finger. Then you want to go to your ratchet. Make sure you got the right size. Go ahead and tighten it up. And what you'll feel is the bearings that you put in the wheel earlier will actually kind of pop in to place, and it'll get tight. Once you get it tight, your wheel's not going to want to move very well. So what you want to do is, once you get that good and tight and all the bearings are set really well, just back it off a little bit. Try your wheel. Back it off a little more. Try your wheel. And just keep doing that until you get it to spin good. And what you want is when you actually go and just kind of move the wheel back and forth a little bit, and you'll feel it just play a little bit. And that little bit of play is what you want, because you don't want it too tight. Your wheel will bind up, and you can also like really damage your bearings that way. So remember, when you're tightening up, just tighten it enough where it's tight, then back it off. Should spin really nice like that. And this one's good. We'll do the rest of them. Okay, now that we have our trucks assembled, we're going to go to Spike, and he's going to go ahead and actually attach the trucks to the deck.
Alright, well, first thing you want to do, since we've actually put this all together here, you want to definitely make sure you already have the pre-made holes for the bolts to go through. You always want to double check everything, make sure that there's nothing too loose, anything of that nature, because it just becomes a big mess later on if you try to create the problem. Make sure you always start off with the right size thing. We actually automatically know most nuts on the bolts are 10 millimeter. And then you're going to need a screwdriver for the other side. And whether or not you use riser pads, we're actually using them today. Always make sure you always put it going with the truck. Usually if it's got the 4 drill close holes in the back, that always goes towards the back because that's how the boards are pre-drilled in most cases. Alright, you want to double check and make sure the trucks are going to go onto the pads just right. Alright, then you slide the bolts through. Alright, well now that we've got the bolts through, it's time to put the trucks on. As I said before, you always want to double check everything just to make sure everything's going to line up just right. Like you can see, if we put it on that way, it's going to be incorrect. So you know automatically it's going to line up perfectly. So what we do, put the risers on first, of course, otherwise you're just going to feel like a retard later on. Secondly, when you're putting on the trucks, always make sure the nut part actually goes in. If you put them on wrong like this, one, you're gonna have a really crazy, you're not gonna have any kind of balance whatsoever when you're trying to skate. Okay, so you put that one on. Put all the nuts on. Once again, just like you did with the ends of the wheels, these are also locking nuts, and you also want to get them finger tight to start off with. Okay, now that we've got all the nuts finger tightened, you're going to take your screwdriver and your wrench, just tighten them down even more. Alright, and as you can see, we're now complete. All the bolts are in place, the riser pads, everything's perfectly fine. You can see the bolts are right on the back side. So it's time to go skate it. Brian, if you do the honors.
Thank you very much.